So, usually, I quite like messages that, hit hard, they go deep, they ask hard questions, give you something to think about. Sounds, just like that conference we just heard about. Well, it's been a heavy few months for all of us here and my family as well. We lost our great buddy Elon, of course, and as it turns out, we had 3 funerals in about a month, and 2 were in one day. So, when I was putting all this together, I thought, I'm keeping it light. I'm keeping it light today. So we're not going to go too heavy today. I'm going to give you a story about my work. We're going to talk a lot about basketball and might throw a bit of Bible in there as well. So maybe we'll get something to take away. All right, so I'll just quickly pray. So Lord, thank you for your word. And even though we're not taking the deepest dive into it today, it's still your word. And you do with it what you will. And I ask that you'll give us all something to take away to make us more like Jesus and so that we can follow your ways a bit better. All right, so there's light messages and then there's really light, right? So sometimes I've seen where churches will say, this month we're going to be talking about a movie or something like that. Have you seen where churches do this? And they'll even do things like give out popcorn at the door, which is actually kind of fun. And then they'll just play clips from the movie and then kind of loosely connect it to some spiritual idea. So I was at one years ago for the movie The Castle. The Castle, right? So they're playing these 3-minute clips and then the preacher would make a point, right? And the only takeaway that I got from that was, man, this is a good movie. I think I'm going to watch this when I get home. Right? Side note on The Castle, right? So I was watching it with my son a couple of years ago. 20 minutes in, they're on the drive to Bonnie Doon, right? And he goes, I'm not into this, it's boring. So it doesn't speak to the next generation. Can you believe it? Oh. Okay, so we're not doing a movie, but it's kind of close. We're going to talk about basketball a lot today. We may learn more about offensive basketball strategy than Jesus, but it doesn't matter. All right, so I'll start you with a story about my work life. All right, so for the last 10 years or so, I have worked from home, right? Now, have we got work from homers here, right? It's the best, isn't it? It's the best. So I've got 4 screens on my desk, right? 2 are for my actual work and 2 are for anything else, right? So this is pretty common with work from homers, I've found, right? So you'll have something else on. You'll have music, or one of my friends from work he's got the news going. He's got the news going all day long, right? Well, I like sports. Okay, but here's the thing about sports, they're not really on during the business day. They're not on 9 to 5, they're on in the evenings. But you know what is on? American sports. American sports are on. The time difference is perfect, right? American football's on a bit, but you know what runs for 7 months of the year? Basketball. American basketball. There's 30 teams, right? How many games do you reckon each team plays in a season, right? I'll give you some reference points. The rugby league plays about 25, 26. American football plays 16, 17. How many games do you reckon each one plays? Give us a guess. Yeah, 82. 82 games a year they play, plus the finals. So that's like 5 or 10 a day, right? This is great news for me because I can have multiple screens with live basketball on all day. And it goes across the time slots. Like it goes from the East Coast to the West Coast. And it's fantastic. It's practically like 9 to 5, right? Here's the thing though, I don't really like basketball that much, but it's the only thing that's on. So I've watched probably thousands of hours of basketball in the background of my life, right? Now I'm also a podcast guy, right? Now there's podcasts for everything these days, and there's one I listen to about basketball. It's called The Low Post, right? Now that's a clever pun for basketball lovers because let's say this is the basketball hoop, right? The low post is a spot on the floor just to the left or the right of the basket, right? So it's called, and the guy who hosts it, his name's Zach Lowe. See, so it's a very clever pun, right? So on this podcast, it's basically Zach Lowe talking to, he's like a journalist or a sports writer. He's talking to other sports writers. They break down all sorts of aspects of basketball, right, to the finest detail. And I don't really care that much about it, but they are so passionate about it, it's kind of hard not to catch it. Something about it grabs me, right? So sometimes they'll interview players. And usually I skip the ones where they're interviewing players because they're not that interesting, right? A lot of players in any sports, they're good at the sport, but they're not very good at talking. They're not that articulate or anything. Or they've had media training, so they'll do a lot of, oh yeah, you know, we've been given 110%, and you know, just doing it for the team, just love the coach, you know, full credit to the boys, all that sort of stuff, right? So it's quite dull. It's quite dull listening to players. And they're not usually honest. They just say everything's great because they want to protect their jobs and their futures. But one time they had this player, and he was pretty honest about things, right? Now, see if you can guess who he is, right? Let's see if we can get it in three. Name three basketball players. Give us a basketball player. Yep, LeBron, Jordan, Kevin Durant. Very good. No, it was none of those. It was a guy called Larry Nance Jr. Anyone heard of Larry Nance Jr.? No, you've got to be a die-hard basketball player fan to have heard of Larry Nance. He's not a superstar. He's not even close. All right? So this is what Larry's job is, right? I'm going to demonstrate what Larry's job is on the court. Okay, because he's kind of tallish and he's kind of strongish, so he often plays the position of centre, okay? Now, bearing in mind, I've never played or coached basketball, so I might get this a bit wrong because the only thing I know is about basketball is thousands of hours of it just accidentally pumping into my head from two screens on my desk, okay? So he plays centre, Shaquille O'Neal, right? He played centre. So you've got to kind of look like that. You've got to be big and strong. All right, now, when they are in possession, right, when his team got the ball, he's got to set picks for better players, right? He's got to do pick and roll. Now, we're going to demonstrate. I need two volunteers, right? I need two volunteers, preferably someone tall. Yeah, come on out, yeah. Although you don't have to be tall, although you two are. All right. Now, the centre, Larry, is supposed to be the tall one. Ironically, I'm going to be playing Larry, okay? All right, you are our point guard. That is our basket, right? So let's go out here, okay? And you're the defender, Will, okay? All right. Now, so I'm Larry, and my job is to hang around in the low post, right? Down here. Now, you're the point guard, right? And you're the defender. You're on the other team. So you go right up there. So you're right up in his face, right? You're right up in his face. Now, this guy, he hasn't got many options, right? So this is an extremely common basketball play. It's called pick and roll, right? So you will put your fist up, right? And you will call out a name, right? So yell out Larry. Larry, right? So now it is my job to come and set a pick, which is I come up here and I get in between you two, right? But I have to be perfectly still, right? Because once I've planted my feet, I can't move anymore, right? That's called setting a pick. So I'm just supposed to go, geez, you two are tall, aren't you? Damn. Right? So the whole job is to get in your way, right? And that now gives you, as the point guard, that gives you options, right? So if you go, I've bought you a little bit of space there, or a little bit of space there, or you can drop back and shoot if you're a good shooter, or your passes that way and that way are easier, right? So my whole job, Larry's whole job, is that, to buy you 1 second of time. Very good, thank you, boys. All right, so that's pick. All right, oh yeah, and after that, right, so after the pick, after the ball's gone, Larry's job is then to roll. That's why it's called pick and roll. So he will roll to the basket and just be here and be available, right? So if they want to pass it to him, they'll pass it to him, and then he's supposed to barge his way for a nice, easy one, like Shaq used to do. That was Shaq's entire career, right? Was rolling, getting it, and just using his huge body to just like blast people out of the way. So that's Larry's job, right? Now, Okay, so that's his job, to stand there, to get in someone's way. It's not a very glamorous job, right? A pole or a well-placed pot plant could probably do the job, right? You don't even get a stat on the stat sheet. There's stats for points, assists, blocks, charges, steals. There's no real stat for setting picks or rolling, right? Others get the glory. All he's doing is making it slightly easier for the guy who he's setting the pick for. All right, now on defense, right? The center's job is to stand under here, near the basket, right? Now they can't be in this area for more than 3 seconds, so they're always kind of going back and forward a bit, right? And all they're doing is their presence discourages people from like attacking the basket because they'll be there, right? And they're quite big, right? You've also got to defend anyone near you, right? So if someone throws it into someone in the low post, you just kind of stick your hand up and get in their way, right? So they're called, the job is called being the rim protector, right? The rim, being the roundy, metally bit, right? So you're basically a rim protector. So not a glamorous job, and as a bonus, everyone who comes to try and score is basically going to bash into you, right? They're pretty much going to hit into you at some point, or you'll jump together, right? So, and part of the game is if you're the defender and you get charged at and you fall and you're planted and you fall over, you'll often get a foul. So the idea is that you want to be bashed into and fall backwards, right? Not a glamorous job, okay? All right. So, very little thanks for it. You're just expected to do it. But here is what Larry said on the podcast about his job, right? He said, "I can be so valuable for a contending team. I'm not a superstar who scores 30 points a game. I'm an in-between height, right? So he's not tiny, so he can't like scoot around, and he's not giant, so he can just stand there and just swat the ball away, right? And he says, I can guard any position. I'm one of the very best of those type of guys, right? Now, ready for a bit of Bible, right? A lot of basketball. Here's a bit of Bible. Okay, so Colossians 3 says, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving. Anyone who does wrong will be paid for their wrongs, and there is no favoritism. So 2 parts of this. Whatever you do, it starts with whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as if working for the Lord. It doesn't matter if what you're doing is unglamorous, or if it's flashy, or if it's seen or unseen, or if it will benefit 1 million people or 1 person. God sees and he doesn't miss anything. All right? Second part is, at the end here, we see it says, anyone who does wrong will be paid for their wrongs, and there's no favoritism. So there's no favoritism. God doesn't care if you've got name recognition or visibility. He is not impressed with influence or celebrity at all, right? You could be Michael Jordan or you can be Larry Nance Jr. just setting the pick, right? And neither is more valuable or worthy in God's eyes, right? The only thing is, like it says here, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart. That's the point, isn't it? It's all about the heart. Work at it with all your heart. All God cares about is, did you do the job you were given with all your heart? Or were you a complainer? Or were you annoyed that you weren't acknowledged or given the glory? Or were you just in it for the human glory? All right, so among us, there are a lot of Larry Nance Juniors. Things get done around here that nobody notices. Like the lawns are all done. The sorting clothes for the shop. The building gets fixed and cleaned. And things just happen, Like one week I came to church and suddenly all that leaching stuff on the stairs, like there was this white leaching, and it's gone. Thanks, Dave, right? But people don't do it for the glory. The disabled toilet out here, right? It was very grimy. It had like 20 years of built-up grime all over it. Now it's sparkling. It's sparkling. Someone came and did that for us. That's so fantastic. That is like setting a high pick and roll or standing in the low post in defense. Nobody notices, but God notices, right? Okay. All right. Now, in our church, in our families, in our jobs, most of us are going to be in the Larry Nance role most of the time. All right? But who cares? Who cares? Let's just work as if working for the Lord and not for human masters. Human praise is fake. It's fake. What matters is what God thinks. All right. Now, one more thing about Larry. All right? Larry has played 461 NBA games, and he averages 7 points a game. 7 points, that is not much. But here's what Larry said. He said, I'm never going to average 20 points a game, but I know that I can be the best I can be at what I'm doing and make my team better. So that's his goal. It's to make the team better. And that should be our goal as well. All right, and we say this in church life all the time. You've got gifts and you've got talents and you've got interests and you've got skills. And you've got to think, I'm going to be the best that I can be at what I do. Right? So Larry played with Kobe Bryant at the Lakers and he played with LeBron at the Cavaliers. And he wasn't trying to be them or he wasn't jealous of them. He just knows, I'm good at what I do and I'll do that the best I can. All right? Okay, so the team he's on at the moment is called the New Orleans Pelicans, right? Now, it's not the greatest name for a sports team, is it? Like, it doesn't really strike fear, you know? You're not, look out, here come the Pelicans, okay? But apparently it's the state bird of Louisiana or something, I don't know. But on this team, there's lots of young players, right? And one of the young players is Zion Williamson. Now, Zion is extremely talented, right? He was the number one pick in the draft, right? I'm not going to go into the whole draft system because it's a whole other thing, but basically everybody wanted him. Everybody wanted him. Now here's the problem with Zion, right? He doesn't always have the best attitude and he gets injured a lot and he doesn't really keep his body in basketball, condition, right? So here's a quote from a sports reporter about Zion, right? This sports reporter said, because this is someone who had just talked to the Pelicans about Zion, and he says, because he had an injured hamstring, they say, the hamstring might be close to healed, but from a conditioning perspective, he has not been able to bridge that gap between his conditioning and his basketball shape. His conditioning is just not there, and from what I am told, he is not even close. So, paraphrase, he's too fat and unfit to play basketball, right? Right? Basically, he's not looking after himself. So in this podcast, they asked Larry, because he's a senior teammate of Zion, and everyone wants to know what's up with Zion, because he could be one of the best, right? And so Larry says that he and other senior players, they feel like they have a responsibility to talk to Zion from time to time about, his habits and his attitude, and not to waste the rare talent and opportunity he has, right? And the senior players try to be role models, right? They try to show the younger ones, this is how you order your life when you're an NBA player to get the most out of it that you can. Now, Larry realizes they can't do everything and people make their own choices, but he's available and he'll speak up sometimes, all right? Now, here is what Paul the Apostle said to Timothy, who was, well, let's say they had a Larry to Zion type relationship, okay? Right, he says, don't let anyone look down on you because you are young, but set an example for the believers in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity. And then in 2 Timothy, he says, these things which you have heard from me in the presence of many witnesses, entrust these to faithful men who will be able to teach others also. Right? We need to be there for each other. Right? If you know stuff or you've experienced things, then we need your wisdom. Right? You've got to be ready and available to pass it on. Like sometimes this is in mentoring and sometimes it's just living by example. Right? So, for example, I'm up here speaking. I've only done this a few times. I'm fairly new at it, right? But Barry's up here the other week, right? Now, Barry, he talks, like the way he speaks, he just has this sort of wisdom and authority. Like, you feel like through some stuff. I just find myself thinking, man, I hope I can be a bit like Barry when I grow up, So we heard about Drastic Camp the other week, right? Now, this is the thing. You don't have to be older. Leading in youth and being consistent and available for the youth is so valuable, right? That is so valuable, right? And you're never too young So just last week as well, Kids Church was in here, and there's Mahala and Ella, right, up the back. They're 11 years old, and they have decided we'll take on the responsibility of looking after the kids during the service. In fact, they're doing it now. They do it every week, right? They're up there doing Kids Church, and they were doing their thing to keep the kids, quiet and happy. So let's look for ways to be available with what we've got, with our life experience, because at any age, the very least, you can, like Paul says to Timothy, be an example to the believers in speech, conduct, love, faith, and purity. All right. Now, finally, one other NBA player. All right. Now, the thing I like about the NBA is everyone is super encouraging to their teammates. There are an enormous amount of high fives and low fives and just general hand tapping. In fact, there is a ridiculous amount, right? Like every time there's a stoppage in play, which is all the time, right? Everyone who's on the court, all five, there's only five at the time, they will all go out of their way to get a quick hand tap, right, from everybody else on their team, right? Now, if you're being subbed out, right, if you've been on and you're off to the bench, right, this is what they'll do. They will go. So first of all, they'll hand tap everybody who's already on the court. So that's 4. Then they will head down to the bench. And they will basically go along the line and just hand tap everybody along the line, right? Hand tap, and then just sit where they're meant to sit, right? Then the guy who's coming on will get up and he will hand tap everyone, right, on the way back. Then he'll get on the court and he'll hand tap all 4 of the blokes on the court, right? It's insane, right? So every time there's a free throw, right? You know when you get it like a free shot from at the basket when you've been fouled, right? Even then, there's a flurry of hand taps. If you get the foul and as you're heading to the free throw line, hand taps all round, right? You get 2 shots. You take your shot, right? If you get it, hand taps. If you miss it, double hand taps, right? It's a lot. It's a lot. Right, now, ironically, the only time when there isn't like a flurry of low fives is when people actually score, right? So when you actually score, you've got to get back, right? So everyone will be running backwards, right? But the clever players, they will manage to get in a couple of freebies along the way, right? Right? So, okay, now, right, now there's one other player, I'm going to tell you about one other player, and that is Paddy Mills, right? Paddy Mills, he's an okay player. He's not a superstar. He doesn't usually start on a team. He's a point guard, right? So he's he's the guy with the ball there. He plays about 10 minutes at a time, and usually when the other better players are resting, right? So, he could be sulky about this, but instead, in a league that is full of enormous amounts of encouragement, Paddy stands above them all, okay? So, and here is how he does it. He is a master of the art of towel waving, right? Towel waving. This is how he does it. Now, NBA is a sweaty game, right? It's played indoors. There's people whose whole job is to wipe the floor when the ball is at the other end. And, if someone falls over, they basically leave a 7-foot puddle, right, that needs to be cleaned up, right? So there's towels everywhere, okay? So if Paddy is on the bench, which he is a lot, every time his team does something good, he'll go for a bit of a towel wave, right? He'll go for a towel wave. So it doesn't matter what they do, like a score, a block, a steal, he's waving the towel, right, furiously, right? Years ago, he was at San Antonio, and the team made a video called The Art of Towel Waving, featuring his 10 most popular techniques, right? So here's the thing, though. I actually think Paddy Mills' career has gone longer than it probably should have, because he's just great to have around, right? They generally call them like a locker room guy. It's the sort of guy you love having around. So, he plays a quarter of the game, and then furiously waves the towel for the rest of it. The guy does this for 82 games straight, right? He's super consistent with it. All right? Hebrews 10:24 says, "And let us consider how we may spur one another on towards love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching." All right? In Romans 12, there's a list of gifts that God gives to the church through people, and one of them is encouragement. The word's paraklesis, and it means bringing someone close to exhort, urge, encourage, give joy, and comfort, right? So encouraging others, it's really not that hard, right? It comes easier to some than others, but we can all do it, right? We can all be locker room guys, the sort of people where you give joy and you encourage, right? You can wave your metaphoric towel around. Sometimes you'll do this one, right? If someone does something that's just like jaw-droppingly amazing, right? Instead of waving it, you just stand there like this, like as if that was so amazing, I'm stunned and can't even wave my towel. All right. So, in summary, God doesn't care less if you're a big shot or just a regular person doing the best with what they've got, right? Matthew 6 says, "Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. So when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets, to be honoured by others. Truly I tell you, they have received their reward in full." So if you're doing things for personal praise or glory or to get notice, well, I hope you get noticed, because that's your reward and you've received it in full. But if we're working as if for God and not for man, God sees and rewards us one way or another. Mentoring, let's be examples and role models, right? We can all do that at any age. And encouragement. Let's be a Paddy Mills type locker room guy who people love to have around and who lifts others up. And that is the end of our lesson on the NBA.